We all want to have an amazing relationship, but it can be really hard if your days are full of bickering and criticism. It's the little things that can really sabotage a relationship so much more than the big things. Today we're going to be talking about 3 little things that can absolutely destroy a relationship and how you can spot them and what you can do about them. I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm a certified master hypnotist. Thank you so much for joining me here. If you'd like to stay on this journey of seeking more mindfulness and a happier way to live, be sure to hit like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. Before I dive into the little things that can destroy a relationship, I do want to acknowledge there are certainly big, giant things that can destroy a relationship. Things like infidelity, porn addiction, and any abuse of any kind. But even these big things also have little signs that you can watch for and identify. So on paper, someone can have all of the same big things in common as you. Things like religion, things like family values, hobbies, travel destinations, and life goals. The problem comes when the day-to-day interactions between the two of you create a space that is not safe or steady, and there isn't a trust, or trust is continually being eroded and it's becoming destructive. So let me give you some examples of things that can destroy and erode the foundation of a relationship, especially if they're persistent and ongoing. The first biggie is if a partner is continually missing bids. So you might be wondering what bids are. Bids are any kind of bid for attention or connection, and they don't have to be verbal. Sometimes they're just body language, but they're cues that you're giving the other person that you'd like them to respond to let you know that you spoke, that they hear you, that they see you, that they understand you. So imagine if one person is looking out the window and notices a really cool bird and says, "Oh my gosh, there's this beautiful bird out here. Never seen anything like it." Now the other partner has 3 ways that they can respond. They can turn toward their partner and say, "Oh wow, you're right. I've never seen anything like that. I think that might be a blah, blah, whatever." And they engage in a meaningful conversation and they are tuned in to their partner. The next way they can choose to respond is they can turn against. They can say something critical or rude like, "That's stupid, I'm busy, you're interrupting me." And they're turning negatively toward the person, even though they are responding, it's not positively. And the third thing they can do is ignore the person completely, not respond, and not act like they even exist. Now, John Gottman's done a lot of research on this, and he has some really great books on it. But it is an incredibly important part of a relationship. Bids happen in verbal and nonverbal ways continually between partners throughout the day. And if there's enough bids that are just missed, the one partner just eventually stops bidding, and they feel really shut off from their partner because they know that they're either going to be criticized or they're going to be ignored like they don't exist when they speak. And a deep erosion of the relationship starts when that's a continual pattern. The second thing to watch for is when one partner doesn't take responsibility for their things, themselves, or what they're doing in the home. Let me give you an example. They're not picking up after themselves, especially in communal common spaces that everyone uses. They're not clearing their plate. They're not helping put things away after dinner. They're not engaging in the connected tasks of keeping life running smoothly in a home together. They're leaving things for others to pick up after them with no intention of going back and doing it themselves. They'll leave it for someone else or delegate it out before they'll actually take the responsibility of doing it themselves. And this is keeping them from functioning like an adult. It keeps them more in a childlike state that requires someone else to take care of them and do things for them, and it allows them to just continue in a state of obliviousness. This creates resentment with the other partner, of course, because they might be asking, might be telling them, "Hey, I'd like you to do this," and it isn't being done. And again, this is attached a little bit to bids. Their bid and request for help in this area is being completely ignored. And then on top of that, they're being treated disrespectfully because this other person isn't respecting the community shared space in the home and doing their part. The third thing to watch for is when one partner won't take no for an answer, when they regularly bully the other partner into getting their way. And I don't mean in ways that are necessarily just sexually related, where we hear about, no means no. And of course that applies. But I also mean other ways. Maybe they want to do some activity. Maybe they want to go some specific place, and their partner says, this doesn't work for me right now. I have too much on my plate, or I already have commitments, and they keep going on. Well, you can put that off, or you can do that another day. Just come on, you never do this. You always say blah, blah, blah. They use the never and always statements, and they're just kind of wear the other person down to the point where they finally say, okay, fine, I'll go. I'll do this thing for you just to make you stop bullying me. But this dynamic is really toxic because the one person doesn't get to have a valid voice in the relationship, and the other one is getting their way. Again, almost like a little child who throws a temper tantrum until the parent gives in and gives them what they want. Then they know, this worked and I can do it again next time. And they do continue to do it, bullying and pushing and not taking no for an answer. And it wears the other partner out so much because their no is not respected, and they end up over-explaining and trying to be seen, heard, and understood by the other partner. These three issues are usually also accompanied by another behavior that's prevalent in these situations, and that is the behavior of the one spouse overreacting and making mountains out of molehills. They tend to be triggered really easily, and they get upset about any kind of request that comes their way. They take things just incredibly personally, and they assign meaning and intent to something their spouse is telling them. And so they act explosively, and they argue, and they start to criticize back out of defensiveness, and it just becomes a pattern where the one spouse starts walking on eggshells because they don't know when the next explosion is going to happen. And the spouse that's really immature here is just continuing on like normal because this is the state they've probably been living in for a long time in their mind mentally, although they don't do it to other people outside of their intimate partner. So they do know that it's not acceptable behavior, and they also probably aren't as deeply triggered by other people as they are by perceived criticisms from their partner. So why is this happening when maybe at first everything felt so right? Everything on paper looked good, you shared the same values and belief systems, and now day by day you're just encountering a barrage of things that you can't quite put your finger on, that don't feel right, and you're feeling worn out and smaller and smaller. Well, it boils down to an entitlement personality and perception of the world. This kind of person has a mentality that's been formed around them being the center of the universe, basically. They've never stepped out of that. Every kid is the center of the universe because they need attention, they need it right away. But these people have never stepped out of seeing themselves as the center of the universe. It can happen for a variety of reasons. One reason is maybe this person had a really neglectful childhood where the parents were not emotionally present or even sometimes physically present, and they didn't take the time to cultivate empathy in their child. They didn't take the time to sit down and capture teachable moments and explain to their child why it's important to consider other people's feelings and why we don't want to go into the world being harmful to other people. This can also happen if a child is enmeshed with their parent and they're excessively doted on. So once again, there isn't that teachable moment happening in the child's life where the parent says, hey, this isn't fair, this isn't kind, and helping them to say, how do you think this other person might feel when you behave this way? There isn't that cultivation of empathy going on, and it keeps the child stuck in being the center of the universe again, even though the scenario is opposite. Both extremes are really damaging to a child and their mental formation. There are other things that can contribute to cultivating this sense of entitlement later in life, either adding to what was already there as a childhood experience or creating this entitlement mentality a little later in life. And one of those things is porn addiction. Porn addiction actually rewires the brain, and they've done a ton of studies on this, so I won't go too far into depth here, but they've hooked up people's brains, given them tests by showing them images of objects and humans before. Then they've went ahead and allowed them to watch pornography, and I think it was less than an hour time frame. And then they give them the test again. In the second test, the part of the brain that lit up when the person would see a chair is now lighting up when they're looking at a human photograph. That's how fast the brain rewires itself for objectivity when it's watching porn. Now, to add to the objectivity, it also creates a dynamic where the person is maybe even trying to learn about sex or sexuality by watching pornography because they don't know or they don't understand. Maybe they're young still. But it sets up a dynamic where the female always wants sex and always says yes. It sets up a dynamic where the male doesn't take any time to consider the pleasure or experience of the female. And there's oftentimes a lot of really cruel and demeaning behavior that goes on. So you add that to the simple rewiring with objectification, and you've got a mess where someone now believes that these things are real and true, and they aren't a reflection of reality, and they aren't a reflection of a true, mutual, respectful relationship. The other thing that can contribute to this are some religions. There are some religions that really promote teaching superiority of one spouse over the other and a dominance submission role that doesn't elevate both human beings to a state of mutual respect, and it doesn't retain their individual aspects. It doesn't help them cultivate the realization that even though they're married, they still have an individual identity and that they need to be respected and have boundaries around that. So one person loses themselves to the belief that the other person should be in charge, and the person in charge loses their respect and mutual view of their partner because they take on a dominance role. This can be incredibly toxic to a healthy mutual relationship. And of course, the last thing that can contribute to this is the culture itself. There's oftentimes a cultural arrogance about how especially men should be entitled and how they shouldn't show their emotions and how they should be numbed out and shut down. And it actually encourages them to not be vulnerable, not get in touch with their feelings, and to not show mutual respect to their partner. So adding that onto childhood issues can just make that belief system more ingrained. So what can you do about it? Because this dynamic emotionally destroys one partner, and it keeps that person in a place of enabling the toxic behavior in the other partner, which isn't doing them any favors. The spouse with the entitlement issue is the one that needs to come to the realization that they need help and that they have caused damage to their relationship so that they can set in motion a repair process. But unfortunately, this doesn't usually happen until the pain of them staying the same is more than the pain of them changing. Hear that again. The pain of them staying the same has to become more than the pain of them changing. So that usually means the spouse being damaged by their behavior is the one that has to make the inner change for themselves first. They will have to redefine their belief system so they can make lasting changes in how they interact with this person in order to really create clear boundaries and consequence plans so that they don't continue to enable that behavior if they decide to stay in the relationship. Reframing their own core beliefs can allow them to build the confidence that they need to create the life that they want, to not enable toxic behavior, to make choices moving forward in other directions, and to really give themselves the things that they need and require an equal amount of respect from other people. Now, I know there are lots of paths to healing, and I have taken a lot of them, but I prefer hypnotherapy, and I'll tell you why. Not just because I am a hypnotherapist, but because that is the thing that really gave me traction. It's the thing that allowed me to access my own subconscious mind, reframe my core belief system so that I could regain my strength, my confidence, and really empower myself to make changes in my life. And that's exactly what it does for my clients. I have the incredible privilege of watching my clients make these rapid transformations that might have otherwise taken them years to accomplish, and they're doing it in a matter of just weeks. When I have clients that are finally ready to break out of this cycle, I create a custom hypnotherapy program just for them to address their needs, to help them get in touch with who they want to be. And really the person that they've probably always been deep inside, and they've covered up with layers and layers of the years of stress and belief systems about who they thought they needed to be. This helps my clients get the most rapid results possible, and not just results for a little while, but lifetime results. When you change yourself, you change your entire world, and you change how the people in your world interact with you. If that's something you really want in your life, check out the link in the description. There is a link down there that will allow you to schedule a totally free complimentary call so that you can find out if this is the right fit for you. Because I don't want you to stay stuck in a life that you aren't loving, or stuck in a relationship that is keeping you small. Also, again, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and comment to let me know what you'd like me to make videos on in the future. And until next time, curate a life by your own design.